ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ वर्स 84 नैवं ब्रह्मत्वबोधस्य सोपाधिविषयत्वतः यावद्विदेहकैवल्यम् उपाधेरनिवारणात्. So Vidyaranya established that Mahavakya Vichara is capable of giving aparoksha jnanam through Vakya Vritti verses. And that is concluded in verse number 79. And then Purvapakshi raised another question, that no sentence can give a direct knowledge of any object, because sentence always consists of words, and words can't give direct knowledge. Words can give only indirect knowledge. So word tiger, if I use, you get a knowledge, of course, but not direct knowledge. It's indirect knowledge. When you perceive the tiger through your senses, well, then definitely that's a direct knowledge. So and therefore, if a single word also gives a paroksha jnanam, then sentence is all words. And therefore, any sentence, you say it is Mahavakya, but it is a sentence. And so sentence always gives a paroksha jnanam. Mahavakya also gives a paroksha jnanam. Also we can say, since a sentence has a many words, and each word is a meaningful word, each word will have its own meaning. And therefore, a sentence which is basically, I'm sorry. So, a sentence which is basically, comprising so many words, and each word contributes its own meaning, and meaning of the one word is different from the another meaning of the other word. So ultimately you get many meaning, and that is plurality of the meaning. That's called Dvaitam. And therefore, how will you say Mahavakya gives a Advaita Jnanam? That's not possible. Mahavakya cannot give a Advaita Vastu Jnanam. Mahavakya cannot give Aparoksha Jnanam also. And therefore, basically, so let us accept, he says, Mahavakya gives a Paroksha Jnanam only. And you require a very separate exercise called Bhavana, which, definitely, long meditation on this meaning of the sentence Mahavakya, etc. For Aparoksha Jnanam. So, and then Bhavana Janya Samskara. If you do a Bhavana, that I am that Brahman for a long time, mind has got that extraordinary power as a result of this meditation, as a result of this additional samskara of a Advaita Vastu, and then you get a Aparoksha Jnanam of Brahman or Advaita Vastu. So direct knowledge which comes after long meditation alone has the power to destroy samsara. So directly listening to Mahavakya through the mouth of a teacher, etc., cannot remove samsara. And he says that's your anubhava also, that you are listening to Mahavakya since many years, but samsara has not gone because it cannot remove. So Mahavakya, we can go to any extent, So Mahavakya gives basically paroksha jnanam only. And aparoksha jnanam comes through meditation, nididhyasanam, etc. Well, Purvapakshi, this was a Purvapakshi in verse number 80. And he gives a logical reasoning also that Vedavakyam paroksha jnana janakam. Vedavakyatvat swargadi vakyavat, etc. I explained you that also. Vidyaranya mentions that Vakyam, Vedavakyam. Mahavakya belongs to Veda. So what? He says. Ultimately, Vedavakya also gives a paroksha jnanam only. Swargadi vakyas are there. Swargadi vakya means jyotishtomena swarga kamaha juhuyat, etc. Or any description of a swarga in terms of words, sentences, will give you a knowledge of swarga, of course, but that is paroksha jnanam. And therefore, same way Mahavakya also appears in the Veda, will give a paroksha jnanam. Then Vidyaranya just gave answer in one word. That what you said a reasoning, it's a yukti, that is true, it's a rule, correct. Words give a paroksha jnanam, that is true, it's a rule. But dashame vyabhicharatah. So dashame, in case of the 10th man, there is a vyabhichara. This reasoning will not be applicable for a 10th man. So means it is not universally true. In generally, it is, it is true in a general sense, generally correct, let us say. But it is not universally true. I mean, there is no exception to that. No, there is an exception. So Tvam Dashamosi, etc. is a Mahavakya, comes under this exception. Because Mahavakya is dealing with something which is a aparokshavastu. He is a 10th man. And then Mahavakya gives him a aparoksha jnana. So here also Mahavakya deals with this Brahman, which is a already self-evident Brahman. Which is already self-evident consciousness. And I is consciousness, simple. See, very simple it is. I am conscious of everything. So what I is available in any stage, in any state, and in an experience. I is always there. So I is basically exist in all experiences, right? In any stage I'm in, or in a childhood, or in a youth, or in a old person. So I is there always in whatever the experiences are there, and in any state, waking state, dream state, etc. And therefore I, in form of an existence, is present in all experiences. And that you mention it as I am conscious of old age, I am conscious of childhood, I am conscious of youth, I am conscious of waking state, I am conscious of dream state. Well, and then when you wake up, you say, I was conscious in a deep sleep state to experience nothingness, etc. So I, which is in the form of existence, present in all experiences, also is consciousness. So what the object of consciousness varies, but I, the consciousness, never varies, and therefore I is just consciousness. I is existence and I is consciousness, because I am present in all experiences, a very existence. I is there in every experience. So it is existence, and you say I am a conscious of that object of experience, whatever. So basically, I am existence, consciousness, and which is limitless. That's it. That's it. So because it has a form. It is an object of consciousness. You say I'm square, or I am 5 feet 8 inches. Well, how can you say you are 5 feet 8 inches? Oh, I know I am. That's it. You say I know I am 5 feet 8 inches. Means that is an object of your knowledge. And therefore, I, the consciousness, has no form. Existence, consciousness, limitlessness. It is simple to prove, very simple. No, Swamiji, it is not simple, but this is really simple. So, basically, one cannot deny that I am present in all experiences, connecting all experiences, I is there. Well, that is true. The object of experience may not be there in the next experience, but I will be always there. So means I is existent. And I am conscious of. Without me, no experience can take place. Object of experience also varies. Anyway, this is by the way. And therefore, well, see, this is, I am self-evident. No, nothing has to be proven. I am self-evident, limitless consciousness. So simple. So therefore, it is a aparoksha jnanam. Mahavakya gives this aparoksha jnanam. And well, so you can't say like this. The shameya vyabhicharata, this vyabhichara, the exception, or a hitva bhasa, as we said, well, that is there in your reasoning. And then in verse 81, Vidyaranya points out that, that Mahavakya gives a paroksha jnanam, etc. You said, well, that's a really a funny thing, because Jivatma, when it comes to get exposure to this Mahavakya, etc., he wants an additional status of Brahmatvam. That's how he comes. He wants to gain a aparoksha jnanam of Brahman. Paroksha jnanam does not give any benefit, really speaking. When that Brahman is myself, then there is benefit. Otherwise, there is no benefit. Brahman means limitlessness, and if you are able to connect the I, Atma with this limitless consciousness, then there is a benefit of dropping all the limitations and samsara, etc. So otherwise, there is no benefit. So he comes to gain this knowledge. And he is already accomplished that I am a jivatma. So that is aparoksha jnanam of a jiva. Himself is there. But he wants an additional status of, additional status of a brahmatvam. That's how it comes. But then you say Mahavakya will give a paroksha jnanam. Suppose student gets a paroksha jnanam through Mahavakya vichara, shravanam, etc. Well, then the rule is object of a paroksha jnanam is paroksha. And so Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam Jnanam he gains, but that is paroksha. Then Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam is paroksha. Then only it gives that Aikya Jnanam is paroksha. So Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam is paroksha, means Jivatma is also paroksha and Paramatma also is paroksha. That is what it is. And therefore, now instead of gaining the additional status of a Paramatma as a paroksha vastu, well, he has lost even that the Jivatma status as a paroksha, because Jivatma has also become paroksha. So that is what swataha aparoksha jivasya. So Jiva who has come to this Vedanta class, well, basically, Brahmatvam abhivanchati. He wants to additional status of a Brahmatvam, that Siddha aparokshatvam nashet. Whatever Siddha means accomplish. What is already accomplished, well, Jivatva status, I am Jiva, etc., that is aparoksha. So, aparokshatvam, which is Siddham, that also has nashet, that also has gone. And therefore, and so, iti, well, this quotation, yuktihi mahati aho, well, your reasoning is really seems to be very funny. Aho means ashcharyam, wonderful. Means here it is it says it is a very funny thing. And then he quoted that, well, so that's how he says your reasoning becomes helps us for that proverb, etc. So, vruddhim ishtavataha moolam api nashtam idrisham laukikam vachanam sartham sampannam tat prasadataha. So, basically, ishtavataha, the person who is desire of gaining a vruddhim, interest, he has lost even his moolam, he has lost his capital also. Instead of gaining interest, he has lost capital. Same way, so his capital was a jivatva, aparoksha jiva. He has aparoksha jnanam of a jiva. And now Mahavakya vichara after that, he has invested that jivatva in that. And he has lost that capital also. Instead of gaining that interest called brahmatvam, he has lost this moolam also. So this has tat prasadataha. That's due to your very wonderful reasoning, Veda Vakyam, etc., Paroksha Jnana Janakam, very beautiful way. You have given us a Anumana Vakya. Well, it's not true. It's not a right approach. Okay, then in verse 83, that also which saw, and basically this says, Purvapakshi says you can never get he brings another point. It's a good point. you can never get a aparoksha jnanam of Brahman. Because Brahman is the nature of the consciousness and all-pervading consciousness, of course, and is available as intimate, self-evident self, I, and that you say, well, when you say, I am Brahman, that is aparoksha jnana. But you cannot say I am Brahman because, you are able to say I am Brahman due to antahkarana upadhi. And therefore it should be available, the consciousness should be available in the mind. How can you otherwise say I am Brahman? And therefore consciousness which is enclosed in the mind, which is available in the antahkaranam, will be able to say I am Chaitanyam, consciousness, etc. But then consciousness which is enclosed in the mind, which obtains in the mind, which is enclosed in the mind, is a jiva. And therefore, jiva can definitely say, I am self-evident consciousness. Definitely. Because consciousness manifests in the mind, enclosed in the mind, that is, and then that can say, I am self-evident consciousness. But that is jiva. Consciousness obtained in the mind is a jiva with a upadhi, right? And therefore, Brahman is a nirupadikam. Therefore, I am Brahman, that kind of a thing is not possible at all. Therefore, aparoksha jnanam of Brahman is not possible. And therefore, Brahman is never available as a aparoksha vastu. And therefore, you can never get aparoksha jnanam of Brahman. However much Mahavakya Vichara you do, that is not possible. Because what is available as a self-evident consciousness is jiva, because that is enclosed. That consciousness is enclosed in the mind. That is how I am itself comes out. And therefore, this aparoksha jnanam, jiva can gain aparoksha jnanam that he can say I am self-evident consciousness. But I am Brahman, that is not possible. Because Brahman has no upadhi, no antakrana even, to say I am Brahman. So, antakrana samvinna bodhaha jivaha, consciousness obtained in the mind, that jiva, aparokshatam arhati, well, that jiva deserves this status of a aparokshatvam. So, we can say a jiva can have aparoksha jnanam of himself, upadhi sadbhavat, because it has a medium, antakaranam, upadhi for self-evidence, natu Brahman, whereas the Brahman doesn't have that upadhi, so it doesn't deserve the status of a aparokshatvam, anupadhitaha. So this is tasil pratyaya in the sense of a hetu. So Brahman has, by definition, is free from all upadhis. And therefore, because Brahman has to manifest. To say I am Brahman, as to say that, aparokshatvam of Brahman is possible when it manifests. Manifest means upadhi. Otherwise, how it is possible? So, anupadhita. That's not possible. So, this is a good argument. So, we can't get aparoksha jnanam of Brahman is not possible. Aparoksha jnanam of jiva is possible. Well, and then he gives answer in verse 84 to 87. Before I go into that, I want to give you a little bit of, a gist of this, what he's going to say in this case. What will be his answer? See, when we say Brahman doesn't have a upadhi abhava, absence of upadhi also is a form of upadhi. I will explain you, which helps in understanding of Brahman. Upadhi abhava is a upadhi of a Brahman. And he further argues also that from the paramarthika drashti there is no upadhi, and therefore we can't talk about absence of upadhi, etc. But in a vyahavarika level, there is a upadhi. Mind is a upadhi, right? And then we can talk about a absence of mind also. So this absence of mind is a vyahavarika upadhi available for Brahman in a vyahavarika drashti in self-knowledge. We should remember, Brahma Jnanam is not a paramarthika vastu. That should be clear in our mind. We are talking about Brahma Jnanam, aparoksha jnanam, of course. So we are talking about Brahma Jnanam, so we bring that paramarthik Brahman to the vyahavarika level. Vyahavarika level means you are introducing upadhi. So jiva also vyahavarika when we say, because we got the upadhi, presence of upadhi. And well, in relation to that, we say absence of a upadhi for a Brahman. And I will explain you. I mean, I'm going to discuss very elaborately this thing, so nothing to worry. But so because of the Vyavarik, I mean, because in a Vyavarik Drishti, upadhis are present, we can talk of absence of upadhi. I will give you example. Suppose there are many vessels, some 6-7 vessels are there, and all vessels have a water except one vessel. There is no water in that. So, well, I tell someone that to bring the vessel. And then he says, what kind of a vessel? Well, I say that vessel which doesn't have a water. So, how do you differentiate the vessel now? So, by absence of water. And therefore, is absence of water actually a positive entity or negative entity? It's a negative entity. Absence of water is not really a thing. But even though absence of water is absence, it is helpful for differentiating that vessel from other vessels, which are filled vessels. So absence of water also is a property. And it is not there, nothing is there, it's absent, still it helps you. And when there is presence of water, well, we say, well, the vessel which has a water, filled vessel, adjective. Empty vessel, adjective. It's also adjective. That also helps. Even though emptiness means nothingness, still it helps you to distinguish from the other vessels which are filled of vessels. So emptiness also is an adjective to the vessel. Emptiness, even though it is nothingness. I give you another example. Baldness of a person. Like me. Okay? So the person who is having a lot of hair. See, understand, upadhi means a conditioning factor is equal to a descriptive factor. That's it. Upadhi means a conditioning factor or a descriptive factor. The factor which helps you to describe a given thing and differentiate also, you can say. So same way, bald person or a person with a hair, and you can describe when he lost hair and this and that and whatever. So baldness of hair means the absence of hair, still it helps you for description, for differentiation, etc. Barren land, we say, barren land. You can describe, yeah, because it is in comparison with the fertile land where a lot of vegetation, this, that, etc. is there. And in barren land, you will write that it doesn't have any vegetation, this is not there, that is not there, it cannot grow anything, etc. etc. So barren means nothingness, but yet it is helpful for description. So in Vyavarika Drishti, well, not only presence, absence also becomes a upadhi. And therefore, this Brahmagnanam is a Vyavarikam. In a Vyavarika status, Brahman has two types of upadhis. Presence of a mind, well, as a upadhi of Brahman. And absence of a mind itself is a upadhi. Mind means upadhi. So I will replace now mind. Absence of a upadhi itself is a upadhi of a Brahman. That's another type of upadhi for Brahman. And therefore, well, and you can see in Mandukya we have Nantah Pragnam, Na Bahish Pragnam, Na Pragnam, Na Pragnam, Nantah Pragnam, etc. So, all this is Shariratraya Abhava or Prapanchatraya Abhava becomes a upadhi for Brahman from a Vyavarika Drishti. And this upadhi can give me knowledge of Brahman. Upadhi Abhava Upadhika Brahmagnanam. Upadhi Abhava Upadhikaha. Upadhi Abhava is a upadhi of this Brahman. So Nirgunam Brahman, etc. Nirupadhikam Brahman. Absence of guna can itself becomes a upadhi of Brahman. In Paramarthikam, there is no question of a sagunam, nirgunam, etc. When you say, I want to gain knowledge of a Brahman, why? Because there is samsara. There is samsara is a Vyavarika vastu or a Paramarthika vastu? It's a Vyavarika vastu. So, since you experience a samsara, well, we require a Brahmagnanam which will remove samsara. Therefore, both should be of a equal order of a reality. If you say samsara is a paramarthika, we have to close the books. Right? There is no question of studying Vedanta. Vedanta is obsolete. Vedanta cannot help what is for a paramarthika vastu. Paramarthikam Brahman, where there is no question of any upadhi, there is nothing other than Brahman. So where is the question of even upadhi? So sagunam, nirgunam, all is a vyavara at a vyavarika level. Since you take yourself to be with different attributes, in order to give you the knowledge of Brahman, we say Brahman is devoid of all upadhis. That is what all the Upanishads do. Neti, neti, etc. is what? It's this only. Even in Nirvana Shatakam also what? Same thing. So to negate itself is upadhi. In order to give a description of Brahman, descriptive factor. So absence, even though it is a nothingness, can give you the knowledge. Therefore, don't say Brahmajnanam is not possible, it is possible. Aparoksha Jnana of Brahman is possible. So, when we describe that Paramarthika Vastu, which is free from any upadhi and even the concept of Saguna, Nirguna, etc., when we describe that Paramarthika Vastu in a Vyavara, then we have to introduce a upadhi. Vyavara comes means upadhi comes. And then Brahman has a upadhi. What is a upadhi? Absence of upadhi is a upadhi. And that is what even in Lalita Sahasranama also, Nirguna, Nishkala, Shanta, Nirupadhik, Nirishvara, etc., etc., Nirnasha, then, Nirlobha, Nirmadaha, etc., etc., Nirmoha, Nirmadaha, Nirmada. So, Brahman is Sopadhik only in a Vyavara. And what is Upadhi here? Well, in Brahmajnanam, absence of a mind is a, absence of a Upadhi is a Upadhi for Brahman. And that Brahman, well, I know aparokshataya. I, the mindless consciousness, am Brahman. Mindless consciousness? And again you say, I am consciousness, mindless consciousness. What is this? What are you speaking? Mind is mithya. Ahankara is mithya. That's what it is. That is what it is. Ahankara is mithya. And therefore, I, the mindful consciousness, is a jiva. I, this, because, as I told you in a Paramarthika Vastu, well, this samsara, etc., itself is not there, though there is no question of a knowledge. So, Vidyaranya says, na evam, your statement that aparoksha jnanam of Brahman is not possible, that statement is not correct. Upadhi is there in the form of a mind, or upadhi is there in the form of a absence of a mind. Upadhi is there for Brahman, presence of a mind, well, that's a jiva. Yeah. And upadhi is not there in form of a mind, but that is Brahman. So Brahmatva bodhasya, understanding of Brahman is sopadhi vishayatvat, or sopadhi vishayatvam, let us say. Brahmatva bodhasya sopadhi vishayatvam. So you have to remove sya and tvam. Brahmatva bodha sopadhi vishaya. This is how they describe. Even in Bhashyakara also described like this. So, understanding of Brahman is always sopadhi. Upadhina saha vartade iti sopadhi. Or sopadhikaha also can say. So, understanding of Brahman is always along with the upadhi, conditioning or descriptive factor. Description is in form of a absence or presence of attributes. So, like as we discussed, emptiness is a description of a vessel. So, yavat videha kaivalyam, Bhashyakara says, Vidyaranya says, yavat videha kaivalyam, until videha kaivalyam, videha means videha mukti, kaivalyam means mukti. So, until person gains a videha mukti, he, as long as in this Vyavarika field, I am jiva, upadehe anivarana, the Brahman can never be free from this conditioning, presence or absence, etc. So either you have to describe it is sagunam or nirgunam, savikaram, nirvikaram, etc. This is all a relative thing in a vyavara. And therefore, don't say nirupaditaha, well, Brahman has no upadhi, and therefore this aparoksha jnana of Brahman is not possible. That's not true. Brahman is sopadhika. And the absence of upadhi itself is upadhi. So you describe Brahman by negating all upadhi. Therefore, that description itself is a descriptive factor, that is Upadhi. And therefore Brahma Jnanam is possible. That's what is a answer. And then, well, just a minute. Yeah. Now let's go to the next verse. Verse number 85. Antakarana sahitya rahitabhyam vishishyate upadhir jiva bhavasya brahmataya shananyatha. Now there's another point, because this discussion, we are discussing something here in terms of upadhi, and we have always discussed the Vedanta, when with a upadhi, then always a condition comes. So, well, definitely, if liberating Brahmajnanam has got a upadhi, you are saying, then what type of upadhi? Because I am limitless in terms of time, place, or in any other attributes, etc. That is moksha. Moksha means a freedom from limitation, freedom from not limitation. That is also not correct. Freedom from the sense of limitation centered on the self. Limitations are there in the body and it will be there. Limitations are there in the mind and that will be there. Limitations are there in the intellect and that will be there. It will be there. No one can be limitless in terms of upadhi. But basically, I am free from all these upadhis, which we consider right now as upadhi. So, well, then I am limitless. And so the point now is, if your Brahmajnanam which liberates from all these limitations, etc., and still you say that such a Brahman has a upadhi, then what type of upadhi it is? Any upadhi limits Brahman. And so a thing or a limited thing, basically of its upadhi, well, see, now I'm just telling you another example, like a wood. What limits wood? Wood which is all pervading means in any form available. It is basically get limited by a one name and form called chair. As though the wood has been conditioned by one name and form called chair or table or like that. So, Brahman also has a upadhi. In Brahmajnanam, Brahman has a upadhi. Well, then, it will be limited. So, where is the question of Brahmajnanam liberates you, makes you free from all limitation, etc.? Where is mukti? If limited Brahman can liberate, then basically, because you say with a upadhi only it will be there. Except Videya Mukti. And so Videya Mukti, because the upadhi itself gets destroyed. All the three upadhis. So basically, till then, in a Brahmajnanam, some upadhi will be there. So then, that such a Brahman which is conditioned by the upadhi is a limited Brahman. If limited Brahman can liberate you, then limited any other thing can liberate you also. Why Brahman? Why should I know Brahman? If limited object, limited Brahman can liberate you, then this is also limited. This thing why it cannot liberate me? Could you follow what I am saying? And therefore, so this is a question now. So verse number 85, it discusses, and further also it is discussed. Because this absence of a upadhi is a upadhi, that itself takes some time, and so we are going to discuss. So Brahman has got this conditioning which is nothing but an absence of all these shariras and prapancha. That's what we call as a upadhi. So very absence, is a form of a condition or upadhi. So to identify Brahman from basically all other finite entities, to differentiate Brahman from all the other finite entities, we are using this, that Brahman is basically prapancha rahitam, shariratraya rahitam, etc., etc. And so, and we have seen the example also. We can take another example. Like there are, suppose 5 buckets are there in India. in certain cities there is a water scarcity, and therefore what they do is when water comes in the morning, etc., 20 minutes, 25 minutes, they will fill up all the buckets and keep in the in United States. I don't think you have done this kind of a thing, but in India, many cities. Once upon a time, I remember even Hyderabad has a severe problem of water. Anyway, so we used to fill up water and keep them in a bathroom, and maybe one of the bucket the water we have used it, and so it is empty. Now suppose if I am sitting in some other room and I ask, bring the bucket, then he says, because he knows there are 6-7 buckets. So if I say, bring the bucket, he says, which bucket? The filled one? So I say the bucket which doesn't have a water. Empty bucket. Now that empty bucket, by saying that empty bucket, I have distinguished that bucket from other buckets. Right? And therefore, basically this upadhi, a conditioning factor, descriptive factor, can be a absence also. Absence also need not be present. So this is what, just an example I'm telling you. So basically Brahman is having a upadhi, antakarana rahita Brahman, etc. Well, that is also a upadhi. That's a way of describing Brahman. Upadhi sahitam Chaitanyam is, we call it as a Jivatma, and Brahmagnanam is a Jnanam of this same consciousness, Chaitanyam, which is free from all Shariras, etc. or Antakarana. So Antakarana he is using in terms of Antakarana Sahitya Rahityabhyam Vishishyati. But you can take any, not just subtle body, you can take a gross body also, and this is how we take Shariratraya Rahitam, etc. or Antakarana Sahitam, Antakarana Rahitam. So the consciousness along with this Antakarana, that's also Upadhi. Antakarana itself is Upadhi, and so consciousness along with the Antakaranam, that is also Sopadhika Brahman, and Antakarana Rahitam Brahman also is a Sopadhikam Brahman. Anyway, so absence of Antakaranam is also, so that's how ultimately Sopadhikam Brahma, that Sopadhikam itself is an adjective. And therefore, Antakarana Rahitam also, that is Antakarana Rahitam Brahma, that also is an adjective. So adjective, absence of Antakaranam also is an adjective for this Brahman. Normally adjective is a positive attribute. Vidyaranya says an adjective can be a absence of a thing also. And I gave you another example of baldness, etc., barren and everything. So knowledge of this Turiya Vastu, Brahma Vastu, is Nishprapancham Brahma when you say. So Prapancharahita Brahman also we can talk about in a Vyavarika plane. So Prapancha itself is absent. In a Paramarthika Vastu, there is no question of a negation. There is no question of a negation of a Prapancha. So negation of Prapancha, well, itself is in relatively when Prapancha is present. So Nishprapancham Brahman also is a concept in a Vyavarika plane. So absence of absence of this world cannot actually limit this Brahman. So Antakarana Sahityam and Rahityam. Antakarana Sahityam means it's an abstract noun. Sahitasya Bhavaha. So that is presence of a mind. Antakarana Sahitasya Bhavaha means basically a presence of a mind. And Antakarana Rahityam, Rahitasya Bhavaha. So absence of a mind. So presence and absence of the mind will differ, in Brahman in two different ways. So how? So it says Upadhi Jiva Bhavasya. So in presence of a mind is there as a, which is Upadhi for a Chaitanyam, which makes that consciousness as a Jivatma. Absence of a mind is a Upadhi for Chaitanyam, which makes this consciousness as a Brahman. So when I look at myself, well, including this mind, well, I am Jiva. When I look at myself, excluding the mind, even as a witness of the mind, in which mind is mithya, etc., or the body is mithya, etc., well, I am just consciousness, limitless consciousness, which is witness of the mind, etc. Well, self-evident consciousness, which is a witness of the mind, etc. Mind is mithya. Mind is non-separate from me, but I am not the mind. So that way you negate the mind. And then this is, well, also a upadhi, negating the upadhi of this body mind sense complex. So, aparoksha jnanam of Brahman is possible. So, when I look up at myself, including a mind, well, I am Jiva, and when I look at myself, excluding the mind, excluding this upadhi, then I am Brahman. So, aparoksha jnanam is possible. So, Jiva bhavasya upadhi bhavati, etc., etc. Antakarana sahitya rahityabhyam vishishyate upadhir jiva bhavasya brahmatayasya na anyatha. Vishishyate means a distinct. So, upadhi of a jiva bhava or upadhi of a brahma bhava are distinct in form of a presence of a mind or absence of a mind. So, I myself, well, will get a two status. Before exposure to Mahavakya, well, I am with a upadhi, with a presence of a mind. And now after exposure to Mahavakya, well, I say I am Brahman, devoid of the mind, etc. And therefore, basically, aparoksha jnanam of Brahman is possible. Other than that, there is no other way we can gain a aparoksha jnanam of Brahman, not through meditation, etc. Na anyatha, he says. Na anyatha means not in any other manner. Thal pratyaya is always in the sense of manner. And so, not in any other sense of any other manner, we can gain aparoksha jnanam of Brahman. So, basically, to negate the upadhi, well, itself, because the same consciousness, same buckets, all same buckets, but in well, absence of, you distinguish one bucket by showing an absence, right? You distinguish it and or describe it. So, that is how here also it is possible. Same consciousness with presence of mind, same consciousness with absence of mind. And therefore, Brahmajnanam, I alone is consciousness when, and limitless consciousness when I negate this antakarana, etc., which is superimposed upon me, or I myself have taken as a mind that is negated. Adhyasa, anyonya adhyasa has been negated. So, this is how I am mindless consciousness. When you say, it's basically saying the mind is mithya. So, this is how Brahmajnanam is possible. We have discussed till this. And then now, Purvapakshi may ask another question. Generally, normally upadhis, we talk about always, then it has certain positive attributes, some presence of attributes, etc. And therefore, we say also this Paramatma or a Brahman appear as Indra, Varuna and these and that, etc. So always we describe Brahman with different upadhis. So how can absence of and then naturally attributes, same Brahman when you say as a Indra, appear as a Indra with a particular name and form, upadhi. And therefore then we can describe and you describe Brahman well free from all upadhis. And then how can this absence of a thing becomes a upadhi? Because we have never seen any upadhi with an absence. We have seen upadhi. In fact, entire Jagat is a upadhi for Brahman. And therefore you can take any name and form, particular name and form, and start describing. So it's a positive thing. We have never seen any absence of a thing can become a upadhi. So further Vidyaranya says, well, you have to focus on what is the function of a upadhi. What is the function of upadhi on Monday? Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.